We've been handing out NFL superlatives. Time now for the NFC South. Starting in New Orleans, Bill Barnwell has the Saints as the team most likely to be dragged into the future. Bill, explain, please.
Well, the Saints did not want to go away from their roster-building philosophy of just worrying about the cap later, just pushing everything into the future, but then Derek Carr retired and handed them back $30 million. And now, looking at their roster, there's a series of veterans: Demario Davis, Cameron Jordan, Taysom Hill, Tyrann Mathieu, veterans, core players who are all free agents after this season. If they all get cut or move on, that would hit $50 million onto the Saints cap in dead money next year, but they'd still have $33 million in cap space without having to restructure anybody else for the first time seemingly in a generation. So the Saints can actually see a future where they're not cap constrained from the first moment the offseason begins.
I'll believe that when I see it, Bill Barnwell. But yes, you are exactly right. The Saints have never wanted to hit the reset button basically in the last 20 years, and Derek Carr went ahead and pressed the reset button for them. It's one of the best gifts Derek Carr could ever give the New Orleans Saints, is saying, hey, you're in a rebuild now, okay? That's better than anything he could have done on the field, especially once he got injured in 2025. To me, I'm looking at this saying, you need to familiarize yourself not with Tyler Shuck or Spencer Rattler or Jake Haener if he gets healthy. If you're a Saints fan, you need to familiarize yourself with Arch Manning and John Mateer and all of the 2026 NFL draft quarterbacks, because that's the end of the pool you guys are going to be on. And if people are saying, Kevin, Arch Manning might not come out in 2026, well, good news, the Saints are going to be bad following season as well. So they'll be in the mix for Arch Manning for a long time. I just don't see a lot of talent. I'm sorry. This will ultimately be good for Saints fans. Just relax. It's going to be okay.
That would be so crazy, because the last time they took a quarterback in the first 2 rounds was his grandfather, Archie Manning, second overall. Wouldn't that be wild? All right, Bill, perfect. Now, you say the team least likely to worry about tomorrow are the Atlanta Falcons. They haven't had a winning season in 7 years. So how so, my friend?
Yeah, Hannah, the fact that they haven't had a winning season in 7 years makes me think they should be approaching this slowly. Instead, they appear to be accelerating and thinking they're one player away. They needed edge rushers. Their pass rush has been terrible for a decade now, but they go out and trade a future first-round pick for James Pierce in the draft after taking Jalen Walker earlier in the first round. That's just a lot of draft capital to give up for a situation where we don't know if they're one player away. History tells us this is a trade that most teams come to regret. It can occasionally be a disaster. I'm thinking about the Broncos trading a future first-round pick and getting Alphonso Smith, and the Seahawks landing a guy by the name of Earl Thomas, who worked out pretty well for them. This is just a trade that teams do not make anymore in the NFL, and the Falcons seem to have been more desperate than calculated with their move.
They're acting not just out of long-term interest, but out of short-term interest, to Bill's point. Which isn't to say I disagree with everything they did. I mean, I like some of the players they added. I'm particularly intrigued by Jalen Walker, who they took in the first round without trading up to go get him. He's a really fascinating player in Georgia's scheme. He's a little bit of a tweener, came in as an off-ball linebacker, but I think has the necessary speed and pass rush ability to be really effective in Raheem Morris's defense. But if he does feel like one of those 2 pass rushers they drafted in the first round has to be productive immediately based on the way that they've approached this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, and you can see why they went all in. Only 31 sacks last season. That was 31st in the NFL, ahead of only the Patriots. Okay, Bill, you say the team most likely to petition the NFL to use an extra football is Tampa Bay. Now, you used that one for the Texans last year. So what do you expect from the Bucs?
You can always use a good superlative again. There's no rule saying you can't use it twice. And the Bucs just have too many playmakers to work with here. They brought back every single player who either caught a pass or ran with the football on offense last year. They're getting Chris Godwin back from his season-ending injury. And then they used their first-round pick on Emeka Ibuka, who's going to be a really exciting prospect at wide receiver as well. Nothing wrong with this philosophy. Adding playmakers is not the problem. But for first-time offensive coordinator Josh Broussard, this is really fascinating. You have a lot of players who are expecting a fair number of targets, fair number of carries. You're going to have to meter that out a bit, and it's going to be on Baker Mayfield to get the ball and spread it around to all these different playmakers as well. So it's a good problem to have, but it's still kind of a problem in Tampa Bay.
I don't know if it's a problem, Bill Barnwell. First of all, I think Baker Mayfield can spread it around. But when I look at this Bucs franchise, I go back to a line that Billy Beane had in Moneyball 20 years ago. When you have to do something, you're screwed, right? The way the Bucs draft now is for value. They're drafting because their roster is so good, like the Eagles do, like the Ravens do, like the Rams do. These top-of-the-line franchises who understand you stack positions, you just take best player available, and you go from there. They obviously need to take a step forward in their secondary, but they drafted Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame in the second round. Hannah can tell you a lot about that. But I'm looking at this roster and I'm saying the way they're stacking talent, Bill, at some point we're going to wake up and they're going to be undeniable Super Bowl contenders. It might not be this year, but in a couple of years they're building towards that because Jason Light is one of the best GMs in all of football. And the way they draft and the fact that they had a luxury at wide receiver and they took another one, they're doing value picks. That's how you win Super Bowls.
Yeah, I mean, even if you look at last season, their pass catchers caught 41 touchdowns. That was tied with the Ravens for the second most in the NFL behind the Bengals. We're going to talk about them later, by the way. Finally, the Panthers. They are the team that Bill says is most likely to have definitely solved their problem this time for sure. Which I like. Bill, it seems like they're always solving problems. What do you like about this offseason?
Oh, yeah, they want to get that wide receiver. To the first team since the 2005 Lions to use 3 top 40 picks in consecutive drafts on wide receivers. I don't know if they're even 1 for 2 so far. They really get kind of up and down. They traded Jonathan Mingo quickly, so he's not going to be the guy, but they love Ted McMillan. And I like him as a player. Just wonder if you're going to get the most out of him given where he was successful in college. He averaged more than 4 yards per route run working out of the slot, more route 2 when he was working outside. But look at the Panthers last year. Their best wide receivers were Adam Thielen and Jalen Coker, 2 guys who were most effective working out of the slot themselves. So sort of wonder how they use McMillan, where they position him. They might not get the most out of him if they keep him as that sort of pure outside X receiver.
I think he can win outside Bill, which is, I agree with you, how he's going to primarily be used. And most importantly, I just love what he does for Bryce Young. You know, I went back and watched some of Young's later starts this past week, and one thing that really struck me was the level of trust he started showing in his receivers. This was in contrast to earlier in his career, but he was throwing aggressively with anticipation, not waiting for guys to get open, giving the opportunity to make plays. Often, they did not make plays and reward him, but that's why I love the McMillan pick so much. You know, in college, he was second amongst all FBS receivers in contested catches. And you really saw the body control, the strength at the catch point, a lot of the, I think, attributes that the Panthers so desperately need. So I'm very optimistic about this pick. I really liked it, even if it is a position that, to Bill's point, they've been trying to get better at for some time now.
I mean, Young had an 85 total QBR in those last 3 weeks of the season. That was just behind Herbert and Mahomes, to your point, Mina.